Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Titans. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously in this episode, we get to learn a little bit more of kind of our main antagonists, May and Gina, and them kind of being the team that they are. It's an interesting circumstance because obviously we find out May's always had these abilities for a while, and she's done them like kind of, I think, some good with it. Maybe killing her boss was the first, well, making her boss kill himself was like the first like bad thing she's ever done with it, and maybe that in itself is what caught the organization's eye. Maybe the organization always had an eye on her, but it wasn't until like now that it really like, maybe until then wasn't until they were like, oh, let's reach out now. And so, obviously, this is about getting with Trigon, and it's like, oh, being chosen. Like, so Gina and May were the special ones. They were like, hey, you could be the ones. They had to do basically a leap of faith into kind of a leap of faith into a pit where you have to fall backwards and trust that he'll catch you. They got banged up, and hey, let's try and climb up. Gina was going to leave May down there because she's like, I'm the one that wants to be his bride, but turns out May was the one that was chosen. That's what kind of caught me off guard, because I guess like their connection is so deep, because it's like, regardless of everything, you weren't perfect in that, you weren't your best in that moment, but I forgive you. We're sisters in this together, and I love you. Because it's like, despite May being chosen, Gina didn't have as much of an issue with it, because I guess it's like, regardless of it all, we're in this together. So we end up finding out that Sebastian's her son. I was like, that's really interesting. Wouldn't have seen that being what that was, but I was like, I figured he was supposed to be kind of being heralded as the chosen one. Because the original chosen one is Rachel, but obviously Rachel turned down her destiny, and it's like, right, that's the route Trigon wanted to go down, and I think they still, I don't know if they still hold him in that same regard, because he is gone now, so for them it's like, whatever. Because before I couldn't tell whether they were trying to find a new vessel for Trigon, but it's like, no, the chosen one, kind of like the devourer of everything. You know, Trigon had his chosen one, and it was going to be Rachel. It was waiting for it. It was always meant to be Rachel, but Sebastian was born, and it's like, I guess May's like, you know what? No, Rachel turned us all away, and Trigon is gone, so my son will be the one that steps in to fulfill his role. Like, he was always the real chosen one, but because it's like, yeah, but Trigon was so blinded by the other prophecies believing it to be Rachel, so... Because it's all also connects to like a fairy book that they ended up finding that has like literally all of them dying. So it's like, cool. And even May's being like, yeah, nothing they can do about it. It's all set in stone. Because obviously, like at the end of it all, Corey's supposed to be dead as well. So... they're the ones that kind of got their own pages. It was Rachel and... no, it might have been Sebastian and... it was either Rachel or... I can't remember. I think Rachel said it was her. So it's like, yeah, her... well, because that was before they found out about Sebastian. So the picture might have actually been Sebastian. Her and... with Corey dead, and then like the rest of the Titans were all on the same page. But I think it's so interesting that Corey got her own page, and I guess her death in particular is supposed to be very, very significant, because this has to deal with her destiny. But whether or not this has any correlation with Beast Boy, because once again, he's also bound by this Red Moon thing, so I'm like, it's still unclear what that's all about. And I do like how this, like, right, the cult stuff, it's like, yeah, we thought we dealt with this, you know, back in season 1. It's like, no. In fact, doing what we did back in season 1, burning this asylum to the ground, in fact, actually led to all this happening, because we released, we gave Gina an opportunity to rescue May from her imprisonment. So... because she refused to renounce everything, and it's like, no, my son, he is the chosen one. I know he will be, so... but it's like, yeah, they thought for sure the cult stuff was going, and it's like, no, it's come back. No wonder, once again, that's why Rachel and Sebastian are at the centerfold of all this. They kind of set things in motion thinking they were, I mean, there's a twofold to it, considering they're like, hey, we rescued Rachel's mom from all of this, and we burned this place to the ground. It's like, well, for one, Rachel's mom ended up being a bad person and working with Trigon, so there's that. But then you add in the fact is like, cool, you also set up the twofold to this plan, because it's like, while all that was happening and you were dealing with that in season 1, Gina and May were just doing their own thing, setting the groundwork for their plan in the end. So it's interesting how that all plays out. I also do love that Jinx is bringing up the fact is, it's like, oh yeah, you're supposed to be Superman's son, right? Connor's like, yeah, somewhat. She's like, oh, can you fly? He's like, no. She's like, do you have that whole magic thing he does too, that magic phobia? He's like, what? I don't have a magic phobia. Superman doesn't have a magic phobia. And Tim's like, well, yeah, he kind of does, at least based on what I've read, because he's the fanboy of the team. So he's like, yeah, I probably read up on stuff. And I'm like, I love that, because that's always been like, I don't know how they handle it in the comic books. TV shows and stuff have kind of really leaned into it, because that's where it's really come up the most. I'm sure the animated stuff might have touched on it, but I definitely know TV shows like Smallville and I want to say like Supergirl. I don't think it really hasn't come up in Superman and Lois yet, but always being like, yeah, Kryptonite's their one weakness, plus if they go up against an opponent like Darkseid who's like stupidly strong. But there's also the fact is of like, oh yeah, there's also like magic ends up being kind of their weak spot, which Connor, I guess up to this point, Connor hadn't, this is their first time the Titans as a whole really, well, except for Dick. Dick's like crossed paths with like the supernatural before. I mean, to be fair, like they all went down this route before. When it came to season 1, you know, the cult and the occult and stuff like that, and obviously that was before Connor and Tim and everything. So it makes sense why, like, yeah, this is Connor's first time really going toe to toe with like straight up magic, you know. So I did think it was interesting how. Also, once again, like the fact is, Jinx makes a reference to like this. The conversation, I talk about it all the time. It's one of my favorite conversations in Superman and Lois. It's in episode 6. It's called Trust. It's the whole conversation Clark has with Jordan. It's a episode and conversation I reference all the time because I think it's such a dope Superman conversation to have. And Jinx kind of has a similar conversation with Connor, because it's about like, oh, helping him with his magic phobia. It's about having strength of will, but it's like, oh, like Superman doesn't have any doubts, and she's like, really? You're all that powerful? He's super powerful, one of the most powerful beings in the universe, and it's like, oh, like he never struggles with whether he's good or bad, which obviously Connor kind of has a little bit of that, just because it's like, well, he does have a little bit of the Lex Luthor in him, but then you also take in the fact is that, yeah, Superman has those issues too, because he has to gain everybody's trust. Like, once again, going back to that conversation. So it's like, yeah, even Superman kind of has his doubts, because he has to prove himself every day that, like, oh, I'm trustworthy. I'm not, you know, I do have this power and I could be the world's biggest threat. I mean, luckily he's got other like people to kind of keep him in check, except for storylines when he doesn't have people to keep him in check, like Injustice, where he kind of gets to, you know, kind of run wild a little bit, you know. But obviously, once again, you had like, well, some superheroes backing him in that, and you have some heroes and some villains backing him in that story, and then Batman continue to always be the one that's always there to keep Clark in check, you know, keep some checks and balances in place. So I just thought that was just kind of an interesting thing that she kind of brought up, because I think Connor's like, yeah, like Superman's too cool, like super powerful, like, you know, to ever like really have I think that's also cuts Connor a little deep too, that he has all these other people telling him so much about Superman, the person he idolizes, who he's a part of, that he's yet to meet. So I think that kind of makes him go like, right, who are you to, like, yeah, Superman's great and amazing. It's like, well, yeah, but, you know, you haven't had the chance to talk to Superman and kind of know like kind of his struggles, some of his issues, that, yeah, he does doubt himself, because he might not be fully human, but he was kind of raised human, and that's still kind of a part of his upbringing, is still a part of him even to this day as Superman, you know? So, but I do love that they strolled up at like the super Mart. I think that is so interesting that the asylum that they burnt down got turned into a supermarket. But the supermarket isn't just a regular supermarket. Hey, it's a supermarket filled with this undead people, with zombies. I was like, oh, that's I was expecting those people to be mind controlled. Wasn't expecting them to be the living dead. Which part of me wonders, like, immediately, I was like, oh, is this supposed to be kind of like them adapting, like, is this kind of almost supposed to be like the deceased comics or something like that? I'm not well versed in it. It's a comic series, like, I've seen, like, stuff pop up here and there in the DC Entertainment YouTube channel. But, like, I'm assuming it's supposed to be, like, the DC equivalency to, like, Marvel Zombies. Like, it's supposed to be that, based on the title, you know? So, but the fact is they went full-blown zombie and stuff like that. That was just pretty dope. And it's like everyone's fending off against the zombies. So, yeah, you gotta go for the head, obviously. So, one zombie got his head clapped off. I'm sure Connor probably could have went, like, just late, but it's like, yeah, probably don't want to go. I'm assuming you would have been able to laser off people's heads, but maybe it's just kind of like nah, let's not do that. It's like, well, because that would have, I mean, honestly, that would have been even more so going full Homelander, honestly. It's like, because it makes me think of that scene from season 2 when it was inside of his head, and was that season? Yeah, that was season 2 when he basically lasered the entire crowd. That's what it immediately made me think of. That's why I said Homelander. But I love that Jinx was able to kind of freeze everyone temporarily. And, yeah, I love the big bad, like, zombie boss. Because I saw him in the trailer and I was like, oh, is that supposed to be Deathstroke? It's like, no, it's a zombie Deathstroke. Which is like, all right, Dick, like, let me handle this. Like, all right, do your thing, Connor. Connor literally punches his head off, but he goes, picks his head back up, and is like, I guess it's because zombie rules of, like, yes, his head's disconnected, but the point is, like, I guess to kind of destroy the brain and maybe hit, regardless, because, like, that one zombie's head got cut off and it was fine. And it was dealt with, but I guess it's like, well, Slade also has, like, the healing factor, so maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's something, because, like, other zombies are like, oh, you're regular zombies, so a head cut off is one thing. This is another thing when it's like, right, the brain needs to full-on bleed, destroyed, because of the healing factor, and he kept his healing factor even as a zombie, so that's interesting. And he ends up stabbing Connor, and I'm curious how, I guess it's like, I wonder, because it's like, oh, come on, Superboy, and then, like, he ends up getting stabbed. I wonder, well, because we know that they ended up taking some of, if not most of what Rachel is, and even the whole Trigon, like, obviously her crystal in her head is kind of going. So I wonder, did they take any of Connor's, like, power in that moment when he got stabbed? It was probably most likely, like, a magic ritualistic knife or something like that. Maybe him being a reanimated zombie made, like, or maybe it's just an enchanted blade, whatever the case may be. It's like, yeah. I think for Connor, it's just kind of like, cool, I'm supposed to be the superpowered person on the team, and especially with the whole Superman conversation, yeah, he's off saving, like, some red dwarf planet. And Jinx being like, yeah, the whole red dwarf planet is about to explode excuse. You know, it's like, yeah, like, maybe Superman's kind of running for his life because he knows this is a magic situation happening here on Earth. But it's like, yeah, I think Connor's just like, he's already feeling more and more self-conscious about it. You know, it's just kind of like, oh, he probably feels like, oh, I'm kind of failing on the Superman front. Like, this is supposed to be me. This is kind of my legacy. I'm supposed to be Superman's legacy to some extent, and I'm kind of failing, getting stabbed. He ends up later on throwing up the snakes, and I'm sure he can't help but think of what happened to Lex. So it's like, that probably doesn't sit well with him. I don't know whether they're going to try and, like, control him or whatever, or whether he's, like, slowly dying, because it's like, yeah, I didn't instantly kill him, but maybe it's slowly killing him. Maybe because, like, right, Lex was a regular person, so, like, the magic might not have been enough to kill him, but at least in Connor's case, he probably can heal enough to survive it, so. They had the facility at, what's its face? God, what am I thinking of? Star Labs. I forgot who they said try to, like, break into the place. They referenced someone, and they also said Constantine. So the place is, like, stacked up against, like, brute strength. I forgot who it was. They referenced someone. I don't remember if it was Superman. It might have been Superman and Constantine, but I definitely caught the Constantine reference because this is our second Constantine reference of the season. Boy, oh boy, you would love to have a Constantine right now to help with this whole thing instead of having, well, Jinx knows her way around this, but still, makes you wonder what Constantine in this universe is dealing with. It's like, hell, you don't even have a Kip from Doom Patrol. I mean, maybe there's a version of him that exists on this Earth, but obviously Titans and Doom Patrol are on two different Earths. At least the shows are. Jinx is saying that the easy solution is just to kill the guy. It's like, right, because she's like, I might be new to the team, but maybe we might as well just kill the guy because that's the easiest thing instead of letting the bad guys get their hands on him, and it's kind of the end all be all to the world. And obviously we saw with the fairy tale, we're all super dead, and she's like, I'm kind of not down for that, so how about we just kill him? But it's like, yeah, the Titans aren't about to like sacrifice him for that sake. So in their minds, it's like, right, the red moon is waning in like 8 hours. All they have to do is wait it out, and then everything goes back to normal, and their plan fails. So you're like, yeah, they're not going to be that fortunate. Maybe the Connor situation is going to play into that. I don't know. We'll see. But I doubt that was kind of pretty sneaky of like, oh, like Sebastian got grabbed and Dick doesn't seem too worried about it. I was like, is it like, well, why isn't it? It's like, oh, it's because it's Jinx in disguise. And she's like, right, didn't have time to work on a voice, but admit it, I copied his body perfectly. And I love it. Because I actually don't fully know the ins and outs of Jinx's abilities. I know, like, the whole, like, she's able to kind of, like, the whole purple, like, once again, just from Teen Titans, the animated series, but I don't know what her ability is in totality. So it just seems, based on a quick Google search, it just seems like her natural ability is just manipulating magical energy, and how, like, it probably just, like, she can manipulate it in many different ways. So it's just like, right, so it's probably like, I don't know if it's like quite like Zatanna, or like, because she doesn't cast spells like Zatanna, or like, well, I know Constantine does. I think Zatanna casts spells, but maybe her power is closer to Zatanna's than it would be Constantine's, because his is like full-blown like casting spells, but I don't know, it just seems like, hers is just like, yeah, there's mystical energy around, I'm able to manipulate it and kind of shift it, and probably very like, maybe it's closer to like a more magical version of a Green Lantern's abilities or something like that. Maybe not the full-blown constructs that they can make, but it's just the way she can manipulate. Because I was like, I wasn't fully sure what her power is. I just always remember the pinkish purple glow, and she's able to do stuff with it, and it's like, right, it's just manipulating objects with the magical energy. So ended up killing Slade. Deathstroke took his gun. It's like, oh, I see you took his gun, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna sell it. That's like, I guess you could probably make a lot of money on the black market, being like, yo, I sold this gun belongs to one Deathstroke, so it's got to be worth something. What I also thought was kind of interesting too, that Corey's powers didn't work. I wonder, is it just because we are dealing with the mystical side of things? Well, because she was able to hurt May, when May attacked him a couple episodes ago. Was that episode 2? May attacked him, I think. Yeah. So I think she was able to, like, at least fend off May, but part of me wonders, did, like, that encounter make it so that May was able to give them some kind of resistance to her abilities? Maybe it's also being dead, like Corey's power can't, like, really battle the dead. Maybe there's kind of just, they have a just natural immunity. Like, maybe her power's almost like it affects life, and since they're not alive, it just kind of did nothing to them. Maybe that's the justification for it. I'm also really curious to see the developments between Rachel and Sebastian. Obviously, I feel like that's going to be the core confrontation to this whole thing. It might be the end result of everything. But the fact is, Rachel has someone she can kind of talk to who's at the core of all this, just like she was. You know, it's like, right, you're connected to the organization. You're kind of seen as kind of like this end-all, be-all chosen child. And it's like, right, she's never had this real connection with anyone. So I think that's what's making her want to really connect with Sebastian and obviously want to save him. It's like, right, she was able to kind of escape all that. She's hoping Sebastian can too. I don't think it's going to work out like that, sadly, but we'll see. Once again, still unclear if Garth's circumstances are connected, because him and Starfire, Corey have the whole Red Moon correlation. So, but once again, the prophecy shows them dying. So I don't know. Obviously, May and Gina Gina's kind of a little reluctant, because May's all about, like, no, like, the prophecy set in stone, there's no face changing that, but Gina's kind of like, maybe you shouldn't be handling things the way you are, just because she's like, maybe we shouldn't be getting all of the Titans involved. But for her, it's like, yeah, Sebastian needs to see the story, because I think it's like, right, once he knows it, there's kind of like, once you know the fate, once you know it all, it can't be undone. I think it's like somewhere deep down inside of him, it's going to be reaching out to fulfill that destiny. So maybe that's what that was kind of all about. Either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.